So just to set the context, actually, that we understand that availability of adequate public charging infrastructure is a key prerequisite for EV adoption. However, perceived high upfront infrastructure investments, difficulty to access land and electricity at affordable rates, and other implementation-related challenges are hampering on-ground charging infrastructure rollout. To overcome these odds, we understand that active involvement of landowning agencies, electricity distribution utilities, financing institutions, and the government at all levels is very much necessary. However, limited understanding of the project financials poses a major challenge in this regard. On the other hand, we also understand that the nascency of the electric mobility sector, its fast evolving technological and business landscapes, and the different charging use cases make it difficult to templatize the implementation mechanisms. And so, there is no single silver bullet that can make the investment in such project attractive. A range of policy or regulatory interventions along with a fresh take on the tender clauses may be warranted. So, and also these efforts will need to strike a balance between the interests of the parties involved, like the charge point operator, the electricity distribution utility or the DISCOM, and the land owning entity. So to this end, it is critical to build an understanding amongst the stakeholders of the business case for setting up a public charging station in applicable contexts. And this, so the need thus arises to empower these actors with a freely available open access resource that can help decode the financial performance of an investment in a public charging station deployment, and also yields insights into its various financial aspects. So as you can see, so this is kind of the brief. So as part of the NDC-TIA initiative, as Aparna was mentioning, WRI-India has developed FACT, a tool that offers a flexible, transparent, and user-friendly method to conduct a quick preliminary assessment of the financial merit for setting up a public charging station. The tool gives the stakeholders a well-rounded view of the financials involved to help develop a foundational understanding of the PCS finance. So this is kind of the value proposition. As you can see, that this tool serves its objectives by enabling the user to, one, understand the composition of the entailed cost to set up and run APCs, estimate the possible project internal rate of return, project IRR, for an investor or for a CPO. So the FACT tool considers project IRR as the primary financial yardstick to understand the investment worthiness of a project. The tool also helps gauge the contributions of the key input variables to the project's net cash inflow or the revenue. And as we understand that sensitivity analysis is going to be very important, because many of the things will keep on changing actually, right? So many of the input variables will kind of evolve over the time. So the tool also helps the user to undertake sensitivity or what if analysis to understand the impacts of the changes in specific input variables on the project IRR. Not only that, the tool helps understand the changes in the values of the input parameters that are needed to achieve the hurdle rate. So when one uses project IRR as the financial indicator, it is generally benchmarked or compared with a hurdle rate or a benchmark rate of return. So the tool actually helps understand the scenario in which that hurdle rate can be achieved. So that's an important feature of the tool. And lastly, it helps forecast a project over the project contract period, the potential incomes of the stakeholders, like the CPO, the landowning entity, and the DISCOM. And also it kind of identifies the break-even year for the investment. While developing the tool, we have done extensive stakeholder consultation actually at multiple stages to seek specific feedback. Moreover, they were made part of a robust peer review exercise while advancing FACT from its beta version. And we have made several changes in the design and the function of the tool based on their inputs. So this is kind of, you can say, the DNA of the tool. So this figure essentially shows how the broad logic of the tool works at the back end of the given input and output pages, and how it links the different input and output parameters. So we will go into the details during the demonstration. On your screen, you can find this QR code. So you can access the tool by scanning the QR code on your screen. Before I conclude this presentation, I would like to highlight that it is important to bear in mind that for in-depth financial analysis of such an investment, the use of more extensive calculations using a suite of financial indicators is highly recommended. This application actually is not should not be considered as a one-stop solution for investment decision making. So this disclaimer is important. So without further ado, let me take you to the tool and show you its myriad of features. So this is the landing page of FACT. And as you can see, on this page, you can get all the important details about the tool. One thing, please remember that when you are opening the Excel file for the first time, you may have to enable the macros, because a lot of macros, a lot of algos have been applied in the tool. So Microsoft Excel may prompt you to enable macros actually. So without that, you may not carry out the operation. So this is the user guide sheet. So you can have the description of the tool and the instructions on how to use it. The tool comprises of a number of input pages and output or result sheets. I will show those sheets shortly. So the input pages are where the model is fed with required input data, whereas the output pages display the corresponding results. The tool uses majorly 4 categories of data: technological, operational, financial, and regulatory. So it is quite comprehensive. And these 4 sets of data are captured by the tool in the form of 2 user input sheets. So one is the user inputs that are very context or case specific, and hence must be provided by the user. FACT requires a limited number of such inputs, which makes the tool quick and easy to use. And then there are the preset input sheet. So in the preset input sheet, there are default values that are already preloaded in the tool, but the user can apply its discretion, has the flexibility to kind of change those input values depending on the context. So for such parameters, the user doesn't have to necessarily collect the data and provide, unless those default values must be replaced with new inputs. So let me start the demonstration right away. So there is the start button at the bottom of the landing page or the user guide page. Yeah, so this is the user input sheets. And as you can see here, a user has to mandatorily provide certain inputs. But that doesn't mean that you have to cover all the parameters or all the cells. The parameters, the cells which are applicable in the concerned context, please consider those only. And for each parameter, specific guidance has been provided. For example, this is the average daily active use, which kind of signifies the utilization of a charging facility. So you can go through this guidance to understand what kind of inputs you may have to provide. So let me start by inputting certain values. So let me consider that a particular charging station has one AC type 2 charger, one Bharat DC0001 charger, and one CCS2 charger. And for AC type 2, let me consider that on an average, it is utilized for about 12 hours. Bharat DC001 about, say, 6 hours. And for CCS2, about, say, 3 hours. And the charging fee we can just assume that for AC type 2, it is around 8 rupees, since it's a slow charger. For the DC001, we can consider about 14 rupees. So, the CPO can consider, generally they apply different charging fees or charging slabs based on the charger type. For CCS2, we can consider about 17 rupees. Here, as you can see, this is the list of the charging units which the tool by default already considers. And it also considers the stacked battery charging systems for swappable batteries, because we also understand that battery swapping is also quite an effective charging solution, particularly for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. But we also understand that the charging landscape is evolving, and in future, new types of charging solutions may emerge. New standards may come into play. And so there are these provisions where the user can actually include or capture new types of charging units actually. So other charger type 1, 2, and 3. So you can actually here account new types of chargers in future if applicable. There are additional guidance also for your easy reference. Now coming to the electricity part, this is an important cost of running a public charging station. And we understand that the electricity tariff in India has two parts: energy charge or the variable charge, and the demand charge or the fixed charge. So let me here consider 6.5 rupees as the energy charge. And one thing I should highlight here, that while considering the energy charge, please consider the landed cost or the all-in rate of electricity tariff. So that should be inclusive of all the taxes and other state levied charges. And as we know that this varies from state to state, and we also have kind of indicated the source from which the user can actually get or obtain these values. So you can refer to the tariff orders, or you can check the websites of the serving discom. For demand charge, let me consider here 300 rupees per kVA per month. Now, whether the public charging station has an exclusive electricity connection or not, that is also pretty important. In certain use cases, say at shared workplace charging use case, or where the charging station is hosted within a mall or in an institutional building, so existing electricity connection may be utilized by the CPO. But then in case of standalone charging stations, generally dedicated connections are applied for, right? And also in certain states, preferential electricity tariffs have been offered for EV charging, and that may require the CPO or the investor to have a dedicated EV connection. So based on the applicable context, you can choose from the drop down whether you require a dedicated connection or not. Let me consider here yes. And then the land rental. This is again an important input to this model. So whether the land rental, the one thing is important is provide the values or respond to these questions if land rental is applicable. In certain use cases, land rental may not be applicable. For example, if the charging station is at a shared workplace or at a shared residential, for shared residential charging purpose, because the RWA or the office building owner may waive off the land rental actually to kind of make the charging economical. So based on that, you can choose. And if land rental is applicable, we see that land rental could be fixed land rental on a monthly basis, which is the conventional way. But for public charging station, we also understand that revenue sharing model is also pretty popular. And as we know that Ministry of Power in its guidelines has advocated the landowning entities to provide land based on this revenue sharing model, where the land rental is linked to the actual electricity consumption at the facility. So here, let me consider that the land rental is not fixed. That means it is applicable, but it is based on the, it is linked to the actual electricity consumption that is based on the revenue sharing model. And as I chose no, this cell gets grayed out. So what is the land rental rate here? So let me consider here 1.5 rupees per unit of electricity as the land rental rate. Just for a quick reference purpose, the model also indicates what is the estimated land requirement. So this can actually help to kind of fix or to consider the land rental in case it is a fixed land rental, because generally that is based on the required area. Then the operation cost. So a public charging station can be staffed throughout its operational duration, or it may not be staffed at all actually, right? And this is an important cost component. We will see that. Here, let me choose that it is actually a staffed or a crewed public charging station. That means throughout its operation, there is someone to kind of manage it. And then the subsidy. Now, there are subsidies available through different schemes at the central as well as at the state, and maybe in future there could be some subsidies available at the city level also, right? And we also find that the design of the subsidies vary. The eligibility criteria also is also not fixed actually. So based on the eligible subsidy amount, please key in the subsidy applicable to this charging station. Let me consider here like 30,000 as the total subsidy that is eligible. I mean, this public charging station is eligible for. So here we can then from here we can go to check the preset inputs. Just to highlight here that in case the user wants to refresh the page, wants to input a fresh set of data for those parameters, there is this one-click solution. You don't have to really manually remove all the inputs. You can just click on the clear all inputs button, and this page will get refreshed automatically. In the interest of time, let me not do that. So let's go to the preset inputs page. So here, as I mentioned, that the page is already preloaded with certain default values, but the user can exercise its right to kind of edit them based to kind of appropriately reflect the context. So here, as you can see, this is the charger configuration and the cost data. So these are the power ratings and these are the costs. So you can very much change them. For example, AC type 2 here by default considers 7 kilowatt. But we know that in the market there are chargers of AC type 2 of rating 22 kilowatt. So here you can easily change that actually. And remember, you have to also then change the cost per charging unit. So that option is also given here. And for new types of chargers, you have the option to key in the necessary values. And these are the other costs. So civil costs, installation and commissioning costs, ancillary electrical infrastructure. So the tool automatically considers whether an exclusive distribution transformer would be required or not, because we know that it depends on whether HT connection would be required or not. So there are certain provisions made whereby the tool can automatically consider whether a dedicated DT would be required or not based on the sanction load or the power demand at the charging facility. This model also considers other income sources for the CPO. We understand that charging fee or charging charges, parking charges could be an additional income source for the CPO. And these are generally applicable for slow charges. Let me consider that 30 rupees per hour is the parking charges for AC type 2. Also, the tool considers secondary net revenue for CPO from non-core businesses, like one can earn from advertisements, public conveniences, and other activities. And so the tool gives the provision to account that. By default, parking charges as well as the secondary net revenue, these values are considered 0, but then you can consider other some values also based on the requirement. Let me consider here that 20,000 is the net revenue from non-core businesses for the CPO. And then there are operational details. Not necessarily a charging station has to run for 24 hours a day, depending on the host facility. For example, if the public charging station is at a mall or is at an office building, it could be of 16 hours as well, based on the operational time of the host facility. Let me keep here 24. And then there are these so as I mentioned that this is the power demand threshold for requirement of exclusive distribution transformer. Here by default we have considered 118 kVA, but then depending on the state regulations, because this vary from state to state, so you can consider a lower value if applicable actually. So these are the different other inputs where default values are already provided. And as I was mentioning during my presentation, that when project error is considered as the financial indicator, generally it is benchmarked with the hurdle rate or the cost of capital. By default, we have considered 13% because during the development of the tool, the State Bank of India's BPLR was around 13%, but we also understand that the interest rate is going up. So you can consider a higher benchmark rate of return. Let me consider here 15% actually. So these are the preset input parameters. So it's very easy to kind of navigate. And if the user wants to restore the default inputs, revert to the default values, there is this one-click solution also. You don't have to really memorize. So just click on the restore default inputs button, and restore the default values will automatically get populated. Let me not do that for this case. Let us go straight to the results section. So this is the first results page where one can get an impression of the cost composition, because this is the first information which an investor or even a policymaker would like to know, like what is the entailed cost and what are the cost components actually. So on the left hand side you can see the project cost breakup. So these are the major cost components: capital investment, cost of electricity, rental, and other O&M costs. And then these are the sub-components of the major components actually. And this column shows the cumulative cost of the component over the 10-year project period. Please mind that. And the same is translated per unit of electricity. And this can be considered as the build-up for the cost of the charging service over the entire project period. This is a pretty useful information, we believe, because it can be referred to while fixing the charging fee, and even implementing agencies or policymakers can see what should be the charging fee for a particular project when they are tendering it out actually. So this could be a very handy information for both investors and the implementing agencies or policymakers. And the same is kind of represented below graphically. So this is the sunburst diagram. So you can see the shares of the different subcomponents. So these are the subcomponents, and these are the components actually, major components of the total project cost. So we can see what is the kind of relative share of the different costs. And on the right hand side, you can also get an idea of the operating cost, because while we were actually showing the beta version of the tool, there was suggestion that if this cost component can be shown separately, because it varies over the year. So here you can see this is the cost of electricity, land rental, other O&M costs, and this is the total operating cost actually over the time period. The same is shown graphically. As we can see here, cost of electricity is a major recurrent cost for the investor, followed by other O&M costs. So this is important because remember, the operator cost, because of the requirement to staff or crew the facility, the cost is quite considerable actually across the time period. Rather, land rental doesn't have a major bearing because we have considered the revenue sharing model at a rate of rupees 1.5 per unit. So this is something very important, and this can be useful while designing a particular tender for tendering out the public charging infrastructure projects actually for rollout. Let me then take you to the project editor and the sensitivity analysis results page. So project editor is the main financial indicator here. We can see that with the given inputs, the project editor is about 3%, which is not really very attractive, because the benchmark we set is 15%. On the right hand side, enough guidance has been provided what different types of IRR means actually, what is the significance of each type of IRR, positive, negative, or null. And as we scroll down, we can see here the contribution of the different input parameters. So these are the key input parameters: capital investment, charging fees, secondary income. And so this is the contribution of these key input parameters to the net cash inflow. And here you can see that these are the influencing factors. So for example, capital investment means it primarily includes the cost of charging units and ancillary equipment. Similarly, charging fee means that there are these factors: charging rate, then the average daily active use of charging units, those kind of things actually. So cost of electricity, it's a combination of energy charges and demand charges. So you can see here actually the contribution of the different input parameters. This is the graphical representation. We can see that charging fee is a very important input to the net cash inflow, and on the other hand, cost of electricity is a major cash outflow component actually, and also the other O&M cost because of the operator cost, right? And as we understand that situations are evolving, and today if you consider certain values, tomorrow that value may not be applicable. So that's why investors carry out sensitivity analysis. Now here you don't have to really do it manually. The tool automatically or autonomously does this standard sensitivity analysis in the range from -20% to +20% actually. So these are the key input parameters which have kind of major bearing on the revenue. And we can see that for example, if charging fee decreases by 20%, the IRR becomes null. But then if the charging fee is increased by 20%, it actually helps the IRR crossing the benchmark rate of 15%. So we get a 22% kind of rate of return here. And so these are for the other parameters. Remember that these 20%, 10%, or these changes are compared to the base rate or the original rate. So this means, so 20% increase in charging fee means if 10 rupee is the charging fee currently, it is 20% of that 10 rupees actually. So please keep in mind while considering the sensitivity results. And these are the results in standalone for each parameter and for each change of the value of the parameter actually. So it is not in combination. Now let me take you to the revenue profile, because that is also an important output from this tool. As I was mentioning, that it is important to strike a balance between the interests of the different parties involved, primarily the CPO, the landowning entity, and the DISCOM. So from this page, from this results page, you can see the revenue profile for each type of stakeholder. So this is the gross revenue for the CPO, this is the net cash inflow for the CPO, this is for the DISCOM, and this is for the landowning entity. And the tool automatically highlights the years where the net cash inflow becomes positive actually, that is the break-even is achieved. So the break-even years are automatically highlighted in green. So from year 3, for example, here the CPO is gaining a positive return. And the same thing can be actually noticed from the graph below. So here we can see that this is the line diagram which kind of represents the net cash inflow for the CPO. It crosses the zero axis at in year 3 actually. So yeah, so this is kind of the revenue profile. Now, coming to the solver feature of the tool, this is a very interesting feature of the tool. So as we can see in this case, that the base case project IRR, considering the given inputs, is 3.23%. And this is lower than the hurdle rate or the benchmark rate of return or the cost of capital. Now, this tool has this one-click solution for the user to help understand the scenario in which the project can achieve this benchmark rate. So you don't have to really carry out a lot of iterations. The tool will autonomously will do the simulation actually in the background with this one click. Let me show you. It may take a bit of time because the simulation does take a bit of time because it does some iterations in the background. Certain boundary conditions have been applied also so that non-practical results do not come. So just click OK here, and you can see the results. Yes. So so the project can achieve this 15% project IRR actually if the capital investment decreases slightly by 0.5%, charging fees increase by 6% approx, parking charges almost same, capital subsidy, no additional capital subsidy is required. Cost of electricity, if it climbs down by about 4%, land rental, if it gets reduced slightly compared to the base rate, the average daily active use, if it increases by about 2.6%, that is the utilization if it improves a bit, and then if the other operational and maintenance costs can be reduced by about 2.25%. So with this scenario where this these changes are kind of realized, the investor can expect the desired rate of return of 15% in this case. So this is a very useful tool to kind of understand how the project can actually give the investor or offer the investor the desired rate of project IRR. So there is this button also to restore, to go back. Let me do that. So the page will get refreshed and we are back to this 3.23%. Now, on this page also, the user can carry out sensitivity analysis or scenario analysis beyond the standard sensitivity which we have shown in the project IRR page. For example, here, so there we have considered minus 20% to a plus 20%. If somebody considers like, okay, 12% increase in charging fee, then what would be the impact? See, it already increases, it already reaches 15%. Now, if tomorrow the cost of electricity goes up by 10%, so what would be the impact? So again, the project IRR comes down to about 9%. If land rental, because currently we have considered a very attractive land rental rate of rupees 1.5 per unit, tomorrow it may not remain the same actually. So if we consider that if the land rental increases by say 15% actually, which is not really accounted in the standard sensitivity analysis, because there we consider minus 20%, minus 10%, plus 10%, and plus 20%. And we can see that land rental, because of the land rental increase, the project decreases further. So here you can carry out sensitivity analysis or scenario analysis based on your requirement. So yeah, so this is all about the tool. And then there are these input data table where you can actually have more details about the different input parameters. So the what sources we have considered for the default values and why those parameters are important. What is the rationale of considering those parameters that we have actually explained in the input data table. And then in the output data table, we have explained what are the different results which are actually available on this tool actually. So here you can get details of the different outputs. So yeah, so this is kind of the the function of the tool. Hope you like the different features of the tool, and hope you find them really beneficial. Please go ahead and try them and share your feedback.